Tonight, you're going to lie in bed. You're going to close your eyes. And if you're like most people, you're going to wake up at some point in the middle of the night, stare at the ceiling, feel a flicker of panic, and think something is wrong with you. But the real answer is far stranger. Nothing is wrong with you. You're doing exactly what your ancestors did for most of human history. You've been taught that sleep is supposed to be one long, unbroken block. 8 hours. Lights off, lights on. Anything less feels like failure. You check the clock. You scroll your phone. You wonder if you're broken. But that idea of sleep, the one block idea, is almost brand new. It's younger than the light bulb that made it possible. Here's where it gets strange. Historian A. Roger Ekirch spent over a decade digging through diaries, court records, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe. He wasn't looking for anything about sleep. He stumbled onto it by accident. Again and again, in letters and journals from the 1500s through the 1700s, he found casual references to something called first sleep and second sleep. Not a typo, not a one-off. Hundreds of documents. A whole culture that slept in 2 shifts, with an hour or 2 of quiet wakefulness in between. What did people do in that gap? They prayed. They talked. They had sex. They tended the fire. Some visited neighbors. Some just lay there, thinking, in the dark, unbothered. It wasn't insomnia. It was Tuesday. So why don't you sleep that way now? Artificial light. That's most of the answer. Before gas lamps and electric bulbs, night was night. Truly dark, truly long, especially in winter. Your ancestors weren't fighting the dark. They were living inside it. On its terms, a long night gave the body room to split its rest into 2 acts, with an intermission built in. Then came the 1800s. Cities lit up. Factories demanded fixed shifts. Clocks started running people instead of the other way around. Segmented sleep didn't just fade. It got pathologized. Waking at 2 a.m. stopped being ordinary and started being a problem to fix. The 2-shift night was engineered out of you in about 100 years, a blink next to the 100,000 years your body spent building the habit in the first place. But maybe that's just Europe. Maybe it's just one historian's theory. Here's the harder question. Does anyone still sleep the old way today without a single clock or bulb in sight? Neuroscientist Jerome Siegel wanted to know. He and his team traveled to 3 of the most isolated pre-industrial societies left on Earth. The Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, the Tsimane of Bolivia. No electricity, no screens, no schedules but the sun. They strapped sleep-tracking devices onto real people and just watched for weeks. What they found broke almost every assumption modern sleep science had made. These groups didn't sleep in 2 shifts. They didn't go to bed at sunset either, the way you might picture natural sleep working. They stayed up for hours after dark, talking around the fire, until the temperature dropped. They slept in one continuous block, averaging under 6.5 hours a night. Fewer hours than most sleep guides recommend for you, and almost none of them napped. Here's the twist inside the twist. Segmented, 2-part sleep, and short, single-block sleep can't both be the ancestral pattern. They're both real. They both show up in real humans, separated by centuries and continents. Which means the story you were told, that there's one correct, natural, ancient way to sleep, was never quite true. Sleep isn't a fixed program written into your DNA. It's a negotiation between your biology and your environment, between the dark you're given and the light you make. Anthropologist Carol Worthman spent years studying sleep across dozens of cultures, from foraging communities to industrial cities, and she found the same pattern everywhere she looked. Where people sleep, who they sleep near, how much light and noise surrounds them, all of it reshapes sleep as much as any internal clock does. In many small-scale societies, people sleep in groups, open or semi-open spaces, waking briefly and often, checking on children, tending fires, without ever thinking of it as waking up. It's just breathing with your eyes open for a minute, then closing them again. Compare that to you. Alone usually. In a sealed room. In total darkness you had to manufacture with blackout curtains, expected to stay unconscious for a fixed 8-hour block, or else something is wrong. No wonder you wake at 3 a.m. and panic. You've built a sleep environment no human ancestor would recognize, and then measured yourself against a standard almost no human population, past or present, actually meets. So what does this mean for you tonight? It means the anxiety is often worse than the waking. Lying awake at 2 a.m. isn't a malfunction. For most of human history, across wildly different environments, it was closer to normal than the 8-hour block you're chasing. Your ancestors didn't fight that hour of wakefulness, they used it. Quietly. Without a phone lighting up their face, without a mental scoreboard counting lost sleep. That's the part worth sitting with. It's not really about the timing of sleep. It's about your relationship to the gaps. Your ancestors treated a 2 a.m. waking as time, not as a failure. You treat it as an emergency. And that panic is often what turns 5 quiet minutes awake into 40 anxious ones staring at a ceiling. The body was never the problem. The story you tell yourself about the body was. There's a practical thread here too. Sleep researchers today increasingly agree that rigid, one-size, 8-hour, uninterrupted advice may be doing more harm than good for a meaningful share of people. Some researchers now suggest that a brief, calm waking period in the night, if you don't fight it, if you don't reach for a screen, may be closer to your species' baseline than the unbroken block marketed to you as ideal. None of this means you should force yourself into 2-shift sleep or trim your night down to 6 hours because a few isolated groups did. Environments differ. Bodies differ. What Ekirch found in candlelit England and what Siegel found around Hadza campfires were both real, both adapted to their own conditions, and neither is a prescription for you specifically. The lesson isn't the schedule, it's the flexibility underneath it. Think about that the next time you wake in the dark, heart ticking a little too fast, hunting for the clock. Your ancestors in more than one time and place, on more than one continent, woke in that same darkness. Some prayed, some talked, some simply lay still, listening to a world that had gone quiet, and let it be quiet with them. Tonight, you're going to lie in bed, and if you wake at 2 a.m., in the dark, staring at the ceiling, remember this. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just remembering something your body never actually forgot.